What gets little attention is what we're doing to our youngest citizens, our children. The U.S. locks up more children than any other developed country by far. It's time we talked about this. In the documentary you're about to see, Prison Kids, you'll meet young people whose lives were torn apart by our juvenile justice system. Kids who needed help, but instead were locked up. And you'll meet those fighting every day to turn it around, to stop the criminalization of childhood in America. If a society is judged by how it cares for its most vulnerable citizens, are we ready for Judgment Day?
No.
We mess a kid up. We can create a problem that did not exist.
Third grader in a Kentucky classroom. The suicide of Khalif Browder, who was featured in The New Yorker. At 16, he was sent to jail for 3 years without ever being convicted of a crime.
And I'm sure he was sent to adult prison. That's kind of what it looks like, although, I mean, probably all the jails are made the same, but commonly, people like 16 and even younger are sent to adult prisons and adult jails. Although, the other inmates can be pretty risky, but you will get a little bit more rights in the adult prisons, especially if you are like an adult. But the youth prisons, it's like, you're not just worried about the other people in there, you're worried about what the staff are going to do to you. Because, of course, everyone should know the institution systems are not just there for trauma-based mind control, but they're specifically like SA trauma-based mind control institutions where a lot of Virgo Vasal goes on. And I know in the ones for kids, there's just a lot of chomos as usual, pretty much with any place where there's young people. So like, I mean, the same thing in schools, same thing in daycares, although keep in mind, daycares, I mean all the schools are, but daycares specifically are owned by Luciferians. Daycares are there so you can send your kids there and they end up with DID. And like, they covered up that McMartin daycare case in the 80s. But if you want to be honest, that's still like how daycares are today. I mean, sure, there may not be like the exact same stuff going on, but their schools are just like, they're trauma pools. Like if you don't get traumatized at home, you're gonna get it at school, along with the indoctrination. But yeah, so anywho, point is, in youth facilities, it's more so the staff you have to worry about than just other people, unlike in adult facilities where you may be more worried about the other people that are in there with you.
The violent confrontation between police and teenagers at a neighborhood pool party in Texas. To many Americans, it's shocking, but it's a system we created, and it's destroying lives.
We can really mess a kid up. We can create a problem that did not exist, and then we turn them loose. We, in essence, created a criminal.
And that's the goal of these systems, and that's what I'm talking about when I say, if they don't just want to drive you crazy and leave you like dead or leave you homeless, they'll turn you into a Manchurian candidate. The goal of these systems is really to, one, experiment on people, and two, to create messed up people and then release them out into the world to do whatever. And then sometimes they may want to kill you, and that also can depend on what part of the Cash for Kids system you're in. So like, are you in higher level where they may be sacrificing people, or are you in lower level? And either way, even if they're not like higher level Cash for Kids system staff where like they know that they're just doing rituals with you, like purposely doing rituals, like actually in the craft or in the occult, still either way, regardless of what the people in the lower level parts of the Cash for Kids system think, they still are participating in abuse rituals. because for one, all abuse is a ritual. So like, I mean, let's say you're I don't know, you're having sex with people while on your period. That's a Thelema ritual. And you may not know that, but either way, you still did just participate in a bloodshed ritual, regardless of what you think. So just because the people who work in the lower level part of the Cash for Kids system may not think or may not know that they're just participating in mass trauma-based mind control and mass torture rituals, they still are. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, this goes into something else that I started saying a few years ago. The mental health system, part of the Cash for Kids system specifically, is Munchausen. They create issues that weren't already there. Their goal is for you to go in there, get brainwashed into thinking that you're bad, crazy, and slow, or quote unquote retarded, and then they actually really mess you up and make you have whatever they're trying to convince you have, and then they release you out into society if you don't end up dying from the drugs, or they don't, like, I don't know, beat you to death or something. And then you're another messed up person walking the streets, being the stereotypical person who's crapping outside in the middle of the street. They create these people. That's my point. And of course, that's like an extreme example, although that's their real goal, is to have a whole bunch of people like that. But if you don't get that bad, they at least want you to be like a zoophile or something who's running around calling yourself a furry. Or they want to like turn you out and mess you up really bad and have you walking around dressed as a furry at 12 saying that you're a coyote fox. And CPS is big with this too. They kidnap people's kids and then they give them back, or they release the kid out into the streets at 15, confused, turned out, don't know what gender they are anymore, cutting themselves and depressed, and saying that they're into BDSM or whatever it's called. I think that's the letters for it. So yeah, CPS is also big on that, taking kids in and then they release them turned out and confused. Because of course, all that stuff comes from trauma. It's just trauma symptoms due to attachment issues and just like the paraphilias that you develop from going through sexual trauma and even just neglect, because just neglect can like make you hypersexual and get into a whole bunch of different sexual stuff as like a coping mechanism and looking for fake love and I don't know, physical connections. And then I think there was something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, back to the Munchausen. That kind of goes into this other thing that I mention pretty often, which is that people get worse after they get a diagnosis, whether the diagnosis is true or not. Because once they get a diagnosis, then they think, well, this is just me. This is just who I am. I was born this way. This means that I just have to act this way, and I have to act out of pocket, and I have to be anxious, and I have to be depressed because I have the label now, or the diagnosis, and this is my identity. And yeah, so that also is another reason that people get worse. Other than the fact that they're being brainwashed into thinking that they're nothing but a retard, or they're nothing but a bad crazy kid, or a bad black kid, or a crazy uh, I'm thinking of an example. Oh yeah, or a crazy hoe, because I remember there was this one girl who was in this one placement I was in, who was trafficked and stuff by different guys off Tinder and other apps like that. And the staff would just talk junk to her about how she was a hoe pretty much. And honestly, a lot of people around her were doing that. And it kind of makes me think of the whole Allie Carter story, where people, since like a lot of people know about her story now because she made her account public for one day, like a little while back, and then she went viral. but she's been on social media for years. So, kind of messing this up, but Allie Carter talked about how like her teachers not only would make fun of her for being trafficked, but some even took part in it. And this girl that I met who was being called a hoe and stuff by the staff for being trafficked, she told me about this PO officer at her school, or this, I guess maybe not a PO officer, security guard, and he was making fun of her for it because some of her like abuse videos went viral, which this is a very common story, and I mention stories like this pretty often. People's SA abuse going viral, as in like the videos, that's really common, and the victim always gets to blame. The parents blame them, the police department blames them, the schools blame them, and then the person commonly ends up unaliving themselves, and then everybody acts like they don't know, and then the whole city and the family covers the story up. But anyway, the police officer told her that she was ruining her life and she didn't care about her decisions she was making. Lo and behold, he eventually got fired because he was inviting all the middle schoolers to his house for quote unquote dates. And I guess maybe that's why he told her that she was ruining her life, because he knew how those situations mess people up, because he was a perpetrator himself. So yeah. Anywho, I think that's all I have to say about that part. Pretty much they create the issue, and he's admitting this here, the dude in this video. And then next, 1328 they make up reasons to keep you, because since there is no real reason for you to be in these systems, and they're trying to brainwash you into making you feel like we're not just having you in here so we can mess you up and leave you schizophrenic. We're keeping you because quote unquote you're bad and you deserve to be here, and it's not just because we get paid to do this and you're a lab rat in our experiment. So now I gotta find it. Dang.
Volatile kind of behavior. Once they get in, they get worse, and then they never get out. And that's what happens to a lot of these kids.
Dr. Stewart.
So yeah. And even if you don't get worse, even if you do nothing while you're in there, they're still gonna like make up reasons to keep you. Especially if you live in like a really poor state. If you live in a poor state like, I don't know, NC, they're gonna like keep making up reasons to keep you for medical insurance fraud, specifically Medicaid fraud. Medicaid pays the most from mental health services, and I actually seen a statistic on that. And it's really messed up, because if you live in like North Carolina, that means if you're in the mental health system branch of the Cash for Kids system, or some TTI that falls under quote unquote mental health treatment, you could be in there for years and years. You could be locked up in some facility till you can sign yourself out at 18, if you're not so messed up by then, or not like, I don't know, in some type of conservatorship to where you can't get yourself out. But yeah, that's the like really, really bad side of it all, not being able to get out. And being somewhere where like these facilities can just keep telling Medicaid, well, we just need 3 more weeks, we just need another 3 more weeks, we just need 1 more month for their quote unquote treatment. And keep in mind, these places have to give you a diagnosis as an excuse to keep you, because if you don't get a diagnosis, the medical insurance won't pay them, because what are they treating you for, quote unquote, if there is no diagnosis? This is why when you go to these facilities, you have to get a diagnosis. This is also why when you go to therapy, you have to get a diagnosis, even if they just give you some type of label like, what did this one lady tell me, that she'll commonly just diagnose her clients with some type of diagnosis. That just means that they're like having trouble fitting into their new environment. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was like, I don't know, having trouble settling disorder. But she said she'll just do that because even before she really does some type of evaluation, if she ever does do one, she has to have a diagnosis to be able to keep the person as a client and to be able to get her paycheck. Okay. 15, 20. Did I do that one yet? I don't think I did. Wait. Oh. Hold up. It's kind of annoying because I'm really close, but it's just hard to really get this. Okay, so this talks about how you get worse.
The worse his behavior got.
It just made me more aggressive. It made me more on the edge. I was always mad, like upset, like frustrated. I feel like the whole program and all that only made us worse. That's all it did. It only made us worse.
Alan said,
And that's the thing. They call these placements in these prisons quote unquote programs. And I just find that really funny.
Says he never took psychotropic drugs until he was on trial in juvenile jail.
And I used to just be up all the time, all night, couldn't sleep.
Then this goes into the drugging. Am I even recording? Hold up.
This will help you sleep.
Seroquel is a powerful antipsychotic drug. When Alan was sent to kid prison, the state continued to prescribe it, sometimes at the maximum dose.
I used to be like stuck, for real. I'd take my Seroquel and just be like stuck. Just staring out of space or something. You really can't even move.
Documents reveal that on one of the days that Alan was incarcerated, 92% of the kids locked up with him were on psychotropic drugs.
And that's the thing. The mental health system is tied into every branch of the Cash for Kids system. I'm going to keep saying it because it is.
The medication and solitary confinement were a dangerous combination.
If you do this to an adolescent for a long period of time, there's significant evidence you're altering brain function and brain development.
We engage in practices in prisons and jails that actually make people far more dangerous.
U.S. Senator Cory Booker has introduced legislation that would ban the use of solitary confinement for juveniles.
We routinely in this country put children in solitary confinement, which has a traumatizing impact on that child's emotional and mental health. In fact,
There's so much I could say about that. Back to the traffic girl. So, like, at one point, she was put in this facility, this mental facility for trafficking victims, quote unquote. She said one of the kids was in there for doing role play on Roblox, and their parents found out and got them put in there. I guess the role play must have been pretty bad. And she said that they were pretty mad about being locked up for that. Because keep in mind, these are still prisons. There is no help in these facilities. And that's one of the funny things about when people say get help as insult. The thing is, there is no help. But yeah, so she was locked in solitary confinement. In fact, I don't even think it was in that place. She got kicked out of that place because she said the place was making her suicidal because she was tired of being locked up. So then she got put in this other place where she was given what people like to call the booty juice, in the institution where they call it the booty juice. And let me not go into that story. But yeah, so she got that a couple times, and actually, I think I mentioned her story before, where she talked about how like she was going in and out of the comas, and she woke up for a few seconds to some lady with her hand in her bra, and she fell back asleep. She was put in solitary confinement after being handcuffed to a bed. And the only thing she had to do, because she was so bored, quote unquote, was practice moaning different guys' names to see which one sounded better, because she couldn't really think of anything else to do. And I don't know if that's disturbing or not. I mean, me and her found it funny, but it's probably because we're messed up in the head. But I don't know what else to say about that.
In fact, 60% of the kids that are committing suicide in prisons are ones that have been put into solitary confinement. Other countries consider the practice torture, but we do it with regularity.
In just 1 year, Alan spent 313 days in solitary confinement.
You know, and one of the really sad things about it is that if you looked at those
313
charts,
days in just 1 year. That means pretty much every day of the year he was in solitary confinement.
a lot of those kids entered the system hopeful that the system could help them.
And that's the thing when it comes to the quote unquote help. You have to know and understand and truly believe that you have to help yourself and you can help yourself. Nobody's going to save you. There is no help in the Cash for Kids system. You're just going to get trafficked and drugged and locked up. That's it. You have to save yourself. And the only real way to do that is by running, but you have to know how to do it the right way. And that's something that a lot of emphasis should be put on. Some people consider giving tips and advice and safe ways for people to run away. People consider that harm reduction. And honestly, I feel like that's more harm reduction than the bullcrap harm reduction, where the government gives out drugs to homeless people to try to keep them on drugs as a form of depopulation and then calling it quote unquote help, but yet they won't actually do anything to really help anyone. So yeah, helping people run safely, or really making real youth shelters, not cash for kids system branches where once they get in they can't leave, which honestly there's barely really any shelters for people under 18 anyway. There really isn't in the US. The only thing there is if you do try to escape an abuse situation is jail and other branches of the cash for kids system, and of course being sent back to whatever situation you escaped. And it kind of reminds me of this comment somebody made, which I've used as a thumbnail for a couple of videos. And they said the reality is there is no safe place for people with abusive parents or no parents. And that's why, as a part of this channel and like trying to make some type of community, I really want to do something about that. Because honestly, there isn't really a safe place for anybody who needs it. There needs to be communities. And I mean real communities, not the quote unquote safe places for, the safe places for, what do they call it? Vulnerable people. Whatever they're calling those things where like all the pedos come together and drag in a whole bunch of confused, turned out, traumatized kids, or kids who just have fallen into the media's bullcrap and now they want to become furries. Not those type of safe places. Real safe places and communities that don't revolve around abuse and taking advantage of people and the Willie Lynch letter and the gay manifesto, which honestly are really similar forms of trauma-based mind control and social conditioning, but that's another video. Okay, so 3606. I'm not gonna lie though, I've never heard of anybody thinking that they were actually gonna get help in juvenile jail. Anybody who's telling themselves that just has cognitive dissonance and magical thinking. That's their way of coping. Like, sure, some people may still believe that the mental health system, quote unquote, helps, but I don't really know who thinks that jail is gonna help them. Even though, like, the systems claim that they do, but I mean, does anybody really believe that stuff without it, like, being some cognitive dissonance coping mechanism? I decided that I should start at this part because this is really, like, important.
These children, while they have a chance while they're still young, and there is a chance for them, because the older they get, the worse it's going to get. It starts out small, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the long-term effect is the children give up. My son has totally given up. He's given up on school. He's given up on himself. It's like nothing I do matters. So I may as well do whatever they say that I'm doing and be what they say I'm gonna be.
And that's another thing, kind of like what I said earlier. These systems are Munchausen by proxy. They create the issue. This dude really did want to do things for himself, but the Cash for Kids system snatched him up, dragged him through the Cash for Kids system, and then eventually funneled him through the adult prison systems. And he just eventually couldn't really do anything. And I mean, once you get charges, what you can do becomes really limited, especially if you already were in a situation where you didn't really have a lot of options. But yeah, so they convince you that you're bad, crazy, and slow, and you're retarded, and all those things, and then eventually you believe it, and then you start doing what they wanted you to do all along, because they want to make you a statistic, and specifically, they want to make you a black statistic, but overall, they want to make you a statistic. They want you to be their little lab rat in their little American corporation experiment, or even, I guess I could say Canadian too. And also China, because China has a Cash for Kids system. Pretty much anywhere there's an orphanage, there's a Cash for Kids system, but America and Canada seem to no, America has a big Cash for Kids system, and China does. But I heard that Canadians, when they want to send their kids to TTIs, they send them to America, and they send them to Utah. But I doubt that it's really true that there's no TTIs in Canada. And of course, there's going to be the mental health system branch of the Cash for Kids system in Canada, because I mean, it's pretty similar to the US. But yeah, in China, you can get put in the Cash for Kids system just for being overweight. So it's serious there. Oops, dang, I just clicked something.
Which is sad. It's really, really sad.
Oh, the one thing I'll say though is that you notice these family systems never really have any accountability for why their kids do have quote unquote issues. Now, of course, a lot of these people, they weren't locked up for trauma symptoms. In fact, most of the people in this documentary were locked up for no reason. But I can say that the families have no accountability, and specifically in the fact that they don't really understand that them and their kids are being taken advantage of, not just by these systems, but by participating in these documentaries. They allow the Cash for Kids system, specifically the school system, to label their kid with ADHD and ODD and also their bull crap. And then these same labels are used to funnel their kid through the prison systems. And they allow their kid to be put on drugs even before getting locked up. They allow the schools to tell them to put their kid on methamphetamine, Ritalin and Adderall, and all these other drugs. And something I've mentioned a lot of times throughout the years is that it's not even just jezebelic Munchausen abusers. It's not even I don't know how my situation was or how some other people's situation was. Sometimes it's just a broken, ignorant, single mom who really just didn't know any better, I guess. And so she lets these people come and tell her that her son specifically, because they love to do this to the boys because they hate men. They want to keep people from becoming men and real women, to be honest. And so the mom lets them put her kid on meth, and then he becomes a crackhead and all these other things that he gets addicted to. Then he becomes a serial killer. He gets into gangs. And the Cash for Kids system seems to really, really run on single moms and then on Munchausen moms. But just like predators say when they're interviewed, the pedo documentaries where people ask the pedos, like, how did you manage to do all the things that you did and how did you get into the kid's life? They always say that they're able to get in because there is no strong father figure. And it reminds me of this one verse that's in like Matthew, I think it is. And the verse says, "These are the type that creep into the houses of silly women laden with sin." And these really are the types. And it's like no strong father figure, and then everything goes downhill from there. And of course, I'm not one of those ignorant people that just say people need dads and then that'll fix everything. And obviously, the issue is that, for one, they did have a dad at some point because the kid was made somehow, unless they're like one of these new lab breed babies. So that means that there was two unhealthy people or somebody was assaulted or something. So the breakdown in the family system, that's what lets the Cash for Kids system in. And if these family systems had more accountability, well, had any accountability, then their kids wouldn't be in the Cash for Kids system. Like, sure, there's these, like, few cases of people being thrown into juvenile jails for crimes they never committed, and the parent just didn't have enough money to, like, get a good lawyer or whatever, and the court systems pretty much just kidnapped their kid. But most of these parents are agreeing for their kid to go into the Cash for Kids system because they don't really understand they're being taken advantage of. And then, no, some of them. Most of the people in the Cash for Kids system are put in there by their abusive parents or relatives. Or they don't have parents, or they were kidnapped from their parents. So the CPS branch of the Cash for Kids system is funneling them into the other branch of the Cash for Kids system and other trafficking organizations. So, yeah. You'll notice that, like, in these different documentaries, the moms will be making it seem like they're a victim, but the only victim is really their kids. And commonly, they're putting their kids in these placements, and they're like, yeah, I'm tired of people making me feel like my kid is bad and my son has ADHD. Your son doesn't have ADHD. He's traumatized. You probably never talked to him about where his dad is, and he probably feels like he just has to act out because he feels like his dad left because he did something wrong. Because people never want to talk to their kids about these types of things, and then, like, the kid just ends up feeling like, well, it's my fault. Like, I remember there was this one kid who he was like the stereotypical trailer park trash, but there was this one kid named I don't know, Trevor or something. He acted like his name was Trevor. and his dad was like on drugs or whatever, and his dad had left, and so he started jumping into the feminine thug persona bullcrap where he walked around with his butt out, and he started trying to be one of these down low thugs. And I remember he was pretty mean to me, and I know a lot of people used to be scared of me because I could just tell people's situations by looking in their eyes and by different things they did. So he was one of those people where I was like, oh dang, I know your whole situation. He felt like he had to act this way because his dad left, because he thinks that, or wait a minute, I'm messing this up. He thought that his dad left him because drugs were better than him. So he felt like he had to join the feminine thug persona social conditioning group and be one of those kids that walks around with their butt out and starts doing things to throw themselves into jail. And he was quote unquote white though. So I would say like the situation was a little different for him because like he's not necessarily the target of the school to prison pipeline, but once you start showing trauma symptoms like that, you do eventually become their target. Because if your parents aren't throwing you into the Cash for Kids system, your trauma symptoms will. So What was I supposed to be getting at? I don't even know. Maybe I finished that sentence. Maybe I didn't. Okay. I have 2 left. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, so 3606. That was about how brainwashing wins. And you see, in that dude's situation, he eventually gave up. That's their goal for you. Their goal for you is to believe that you're just retarded and you're never going to be able to do anything but be in prison, pretty much. And I remember the mom was talking about her kids had quote-unquote disabilities. If you want to be truthfully honest, aside from the trauma and, like, different things that have probably happened in the family system that, of course, wouldn't be mentioned and wherever their dad is, I would say, honestly, they probably have, like, some issues, like some, their learning disabilities that they have, quote-unquote, because I don't really like that term. If it's not, like, revolving around sugar and diet and, people just eating things that people of their ethnicity really can't take, it's probably like the epigenetics from the GMOs and different things like that. That's probably where the issues that they have come from. If there, like, wasn't any drug use ever from the parents while the mom was pregnant or whatever. And that's another thing with these mental labels and the mental illness obsession that America has. They love to act like people just pop up mentally ill out the blue, but that's not how that works. There's a reason that you get the issues you get, whether it's the spiritual side, which revolves around trauma, or the physical side. Although the spiritual side can sometimes revolve around things with, like, social conditioning in the media and schools, but the physical side revolves around the food and different things like that that I can't say, and that's the real issue too. Also different things in your environment. But yeah, you don't just, like, pop up with issues, and if you are born with them, there's a reason for that too. And it's like there's no accountability anywhere for, like, why these people are developing the issues that they supposedly have or actually do have.
Imagination that we're better than this and get more people to get engaged, because this is not one of the big issues. You're not going to see this leading the headlines on the evening news, or you poll people in this next presidential election, will this be one of the big? It won't be. But this is one of these issues that we as a country have to say, this is not us.
Savannah went to county jail on a parole violation after leaving juvenile prison.
You know you're not supposed to be doing that.
Since being released from jail, she's picked up a new charge.
They read my whole juvenile record in there. They started, from 2005. So I was like, I didn't even know that they would really do something like that.
She's facing a harsher sentence because of her juvenile record.
Quite frankly, if locking a child up taught them a lesson so they'd never commit a crime, we would be the safest country.
Like that.
She's facing a harsher sentence because of her juvenile record.
Quite frankly, if
I thought I paused this. I don't even know how long it's still been recording.
locking a child up taught them a lesson so they'd never commit a crime, we would be the safest country in the world because we lock up so many children. But clearly, experience shows that doesn't work. It's not teaching them a lesson. It's not getting them on the right path.
A few months after our interview, we visited Alan again. Kim Tandy had offered him the chance to join a reentry program in Cincinnati, 4 hours away from home.
So, like, I talked to her today, and we talked about maybe going to mall or something. Go out there, see what it's like, see what I...
So yeah, I was supposed to be playing the 10158 part, and that kind of just shows that there's no good outcomes in these quote-unquote programs and treatment facilities. They're just there to keep trying to drag you through the cash for kids system, and then eventually the adult prison systems, or what I just like to call the people cash cow systems. In fact, before the part started playing where the lady was talking about how if locking up kids really worked, then we'd be the safest country. Before that part, this other person who was in juvenile jail a couple times was talking about how they ended up getting another charge, and then in court, they the lawyers or whatever in the world, the judge I guess, had went all the way through their juvenile records back to 2005 to try to give them a harsher sentence. And that's what they do. They try to give you a track record, and then they keep trying to make you feel like you did something wrong. In fact, wait a minute. Hold up. I'm pretty sure, yeah, somewhere in this video, this girl right here. Wait a minute. Well, dang, hold up. Okay, no. She was right there. Hold up. I don't even know. But the girl in the video had talked about how her mom said she felt like her daughter took away her whole chance to raising her by getting locked up. But the thing is, you're blaming your daughter because the systems keep locking her up over and over again for no reason. Like, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same video where this kid got locked up for throwing Skittles. So, like, it's really crazy. It actually reminds me of this one documentary I watched about, no, it wasn't Beyond Scared Straight, I don't think, but it was something like that. Maybe it was, but this one kid was like 6, and his mom had got him put in there because she was mad at him. And that's the thing with these systems. Especially once they start turning your abuse into documentaries, and they start making money off of it by putting it on Netflix, like Beyond Scared Straight, Girls Incarcerated, and other shows like that, including Dr. Phil did. That brings in even more people. That brings in a whole audience that comes in and victim blames you for your abuse. And then, like, you have people that make those reaction videos to Beyond Scared Straight, where they would call themselves, quote unquote, laughing at the bad kids. Like, I remember there was this one episode of Beyond Scared Straight where this one boy he got locked up for getting molested. He got locked up because his molester got pregnant. And then he was screamed at by this one staff, and the staff member was like, and if you would tell us where your girlfriend's name, and no, if your parents would tell us your girlfriend's name and where she lives, she'd be in here too. And honestly, that's bull crap. The molesters are never gonna go to jail. In fact, honestly, I should find that clip because that goes along with this point that I started making years ago, revolving around quote unquote CP, or as I call it, child essay imagery. The kid victims get charged and go to jail. But that's a whole nother video. So anywho, I think I already played 10236. I think. Wait a minute.
Have known so many of these young kids who have beauty and strength and potential that we're wasting and squandering. I don't want to be in the country that leads the globe, the planet Earth, in incarceration.
Zion went through a series of brain scans this summer. He got a new diagnosis: intermittent seizures.
And mind you, the seizures are from the drugs he was forced on. I've actually seen this happen to somebody before. Not only did the girl, of course, get the diabetic syndrome weight, no, the metabolic syndrome weight and the diabetes type 2. She also got the seizures, which that comes from a couple of different things that the drugs do with causing brain damage. Also probably has something to do with like the insulin resistance that the drugs cause and sugar. And honestly, I would love to ask this kid's mom what his diet is. Am I even recording? But yeah.
What it is basically he gets so overwhelmed that it needs to come out. Kind of like Tourette syndrome, that they build up and it has to come up and they feel much better afterwards.
This is really annoying to me though. People really need to actually start working through generational trauma instead of making up new mental labels so nobody has to take accountability for screwing their kids up. And I guarantee you that he probably eats a lot of sugar.
Zion.
Other than the drugs messing him up, which are just going to cause more issues. Like at one point, the lady was talking about how the drugs were causing a lot of issues, and so he had to get put on some different drugs. And there was even this one comment I saw where someone was like, before you put your kids on these meds, quote unquote meds, make sure you do a DNA test, because I found out that my son wasn't metabolizing his medicines and they were causing issues. These aren't meds, these are drugs. There are no meds for quote unquote mental illness anyway. Nobody is going to be able to take neurotoxin drugs that cause brain damage, regardless of whether their body can metabolize them or not.
Is on new medication and is doing better. He started at the same school in August.
I want him to be able to do whatever.
And you notice that all these issues come in school. Like, was he not getting in trouble at home? It's funny how these kids go to school, then the school starts telling their parents to label them and drug them on meth and crack and fentanyl and opioids and Xanax and make them a drug addict that's going to be messed up and walking around talking to themselves in 2 years. But, like, the issues aren't there at home sometimes, and when they are, it's because they're trauma symptoms. But issues like this is trauma and sugar. That's all it is. It's trauma and sugar.
He wants. Whatever he wants, whatever he likes, he should be able to. Anything that he did.
And it really annoys me that people act like their kids aren't supposed to feel upset about one of their parents leaving, or about really any bad thing that happens. And so then they play dumb and ignorant, and then they get their kid labeled all these bullcrap labels. Because I guess they're not supposed to feel upset that their parent left, or the parents... I don't know, it's just really annoying. I don't know why people act like they don't understand that their kid's upset because their dad is gone.
In elementary school, I don't think it should matter. And he's really, really trying really hard.
God, help me. Let me calm down. Please don't let nobody distract me. In Jesus' name, amen.
You know, I'm proud of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love you.
I love you too.
I don't know, it annoys me watching people play games like this while drugging their kids. And it's like, I don't know, there's just so much I could say. Like, he could probably even have an imbalanced gut microbiome too. It's just so much stuff that actually causes these things, but instead, they're funneling their kids through the Cash for Kids system. Like, do the research on your own. Don't let some schools come and tell you to drug your kid because he's being a boy. Yeah, I guess that's it. Oh, wait a minute, is it? Oh, no, because there's other things I have to say. So, here's some statistics that were really hard to get, but they're definitely... I mean, I know that these systems make more money than this. They have to, but Cash for Kids system statistics when it comes to money and how much money they make a year. So in this documentary, they said that the juvenile justice system specifically makes $8 billion to incarcerate kids through taxpayer dollars. And then other statistics that I got from other places. TTI is $100 billion a year. Mental health system, $280 billion a year. Medicaid is the largest payer for behavioral health, quote unquote behavioral health. Youth residential, all I could get is millions. Special ed, as of 2022, $12.5 billion. Boarding schools, $50,000 to $90,000 per student. Military schools, which apparently are funded by the Pentagon as well, which is very interesting. Wonder if they're tied to the DMLA. Makes $3 billion. CPS/social services/defects makes several billion a year. American school system, $878.2 billion a year. SRE sex trafficking, $245 billion a year. Dr. Phil, $95 million per year. Girls Incarcerated, which was a show on Netflix, won't publicize earnings. Beyond Scared Straight, several $1 million per year.